We are going to instantly overreact to the beginning of the week that was in Ole Miss football and recruiting, and we'll talk about different scenarios and things that are going on as well. We might be joined by Brad Logan. We're waiting to see if he shows up. If he comes in, we'll have him on the show as well. But this is the Shark Tank Live Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, just like that, Brad Logan is here. How you doing, Brad? We're live, by the way.
Yeah, I just noticed that whenever I jumped on. I said, I think we're live tonight.
Yeah, we are absolutely live and a big turnout so far. We're up to about 50 viewers. And Brad, it's an amazing thing that my mother has been here for like the last 5 days. So I've been a little bit behind the eight ball. But what went on last night and the excitement that was just, you could feel it in the Ole Miss fan base is just kind of something cool.
Well, what you saw is no pun intended, a collective group that came together and decided that they're going to make this particular football program, specifically next year, possibly the best time in program history, at least as long as you and I have been alive, and probably everybody watching and listening. So what we've got here is Ole Miss is going after the creme of the creme. I mean, I think you actually said on one of the platforms that you have is that Ole Miss is big game hunting. That's about the best way to put it. You talk about the players that they have now versus who they have coming back. You know, we had a chance to visit with Lane Kiffin along with Gary Stokin, the CEO of the Peach Bowl, earlier today at the Peach Bowl press conference. Not a lot of content, but what we did learn is that Lane Kiffin does not expect anyone to opt out of the bowl game. The only player now that's not coming back is Dayton Wade, and he, of course, is going to the NFL. I was a little surprised Trey Harris, Steven, is coming back. I thought he would grade pretty well in the NFL, which tells me, sure, money is big. I get it. Money's a big component in this. But I truly think this collective group of players coming back with Jackson Dart, who hasn't officially come back, but look, he's coming back. With Quinshon Judkins, who hasn't officially come back, but I think Quinshon's coming back as well. You talk about Micah Pettis, so I wasn't sure Micah Pettis was coming back. So all of these players, Jeremy Pegues, and all of these players coming back, I think they're coming back to do one thing. And I don't think it's anything wrong with saying they're coming back for the college football playoff. And I think if you roll the dice and the dice come up snake eyes, I think Ole Miss can win the whole thing next year. And I think it's time Ole Miss fans realize that. That's how good this team's going to be, I think.
Yeah, it is bizarre. And, honestly, for the better part of about 18 months, the narrative about me, just randomly that you would hear, is just ultimate homer. He's Mr. Sunshine. I'm a sunshine pumper is what they say. And talking about going in, yeah, I'm a fanboy. I'm just a fan. And if you're a fan, you cannot actually say honestly what's going on. And everything that I said this season has come true. So if I'm a fan, I had a season that I really, really enjoyed. And our goal, I think, in this next season, with the playoff out there, and with expectations comes a little bit more pressure, but we need to make sure that we have fun during this run and enjoy this, because we've had 40, 50 years of futility a little bit. I think Ole Miss fans need to enjoy the coming year.
This is about as good as it can get, I believe. And this could be, on paper, the biggest year in Ole Miss history, dating back to when Coach Vaught and, 1960s and 1950s, whenever he won all those games. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. And I think Lane Kiffin knows that. I think Walker Jones and the Grove Collective know that. And I think the people that are behind the scenes that are making things happen with, we haven't seen the answers come back for Juice Wells, but from everything we understand, that's a big-time opportunity for Ole Miss to transfer wide receiver out of South Carolina. Also, we've got a big announcement coming tomorrow with Kawan Lacey, the four-star running back out of Texas.
Thursday. I think Thursday. That's actually Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday, and that's happening in the afternoon. Yeah, you're right. And so, yeah, I think everyone that I've talked to thinks Ole Miss has a great shot there. You got Walter Nolen, the transfer, 5-star transfer that's got ties to South Haven, coming in to visit Ole Miss. The question is when is that going to be? We don't know yet, and we may not know. And you and I talked off air this afternoon. Ole Miss is doing so many things behind the scenes that nobody knows about. Even the people that get the information to release the information, they don't know about it. We've seen so many transfer portal visits come in. We saw a big commitment by a cornerback over there. I guess it was yesterday. We've seen a commitment out of the Central Florida cornerback as well. And all of those players came in kind of underneath everybody's nose. So I expect they may get in and get out Walter Nolen. But look, Stephen, everybody I've spoke to in the Manning Center feels really, really good about Ole Miss's opportunity to get Nolen. And I forget what the tweet was, but it laid out the the defensive line on paper next year. Hard pressed to say that may be not only one of the best in the SEC, one of the best in the country, if Ole Miss can land Princely out of Florida, and of course Walter Nolen out of Texas A&M. Already you've got Jeremy Pegues coming back. By the way, Jared Ivey announces this afternoon he's coming back. I didn't anticipate that one either. This is setting up to be a monster season in 2024. Not to mention a little bit of a spring game type atmosphere in the Peach Bowl, because now you get an opportunity to see some of these guys come back. I expect 40,000 Ole Miss fans to be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And I don't mean to demean the Peach Bowl saying it's a spring game. What I mean by that is you're getting all this information coming in. You're finally going to get to see people that know they're making the decision to come back to play for the 2024 season. And by the way, ESPN has released the LSU game will be on a specific date at some point in November. I forget what date it is.
No, it's October 12th.
October 12th. Okay. Eli and Peyton will do some sort of a Manning cast there. And also, while we're talking about it, Jake Thompson released today from On3 that the Egg Bowl, both Zach Selman and Keith Carter will get together at the end of this year and at the beginning of next year to decide whether that game's going to be on Thursday or Saturday. That's been a big topic of conversation over the last couple of weeks.
I still think at the end of the day, when all this is said and done, it's going to be Texas and Texas A&M on Thanksgiving. There's nothing that in my gut that makes me think it would be anything else but that. Honestly.
Yeah, the big holdup right now is this contract runs through 2024, and that's what's holding everything up. Because if it were Ole Miss, and I don't know this, but I think if it were to be Ole Miss's call, Chancellor Boyce's call, I think this thing is on Saturday. I don't think there's any doubt. I think Ole Miss wants it on Saturday, but they've got to make sure that ESPN and both Zach Selman, the director of athletics at Mississippi State, would be on board with that. Otherwise, it's going to be on Thanksgiving because that's what the contract says.
I honestly think the Egg Bowl is going to be on Friday. This is just a gut feeling. I do not think it's going to be on Saturday because I do think the ESPN wants for lack of a better word, the sideshow and the carnival aspect on it to where it can stand alone a little bit. And now that CBS is not in the fold, ABC needs some programming for Friday. So it might be a situation where it's Friday night.
It could be.
Is what I think is going to happen with the
because you're going to have a Friday afternoon Missouri LSU game on ESPN. If they choose to keep what the history shows that CBS has, CBS for years would have the LSU Arkansas game on Friday, which I really liked. They alternated between Little Rock and Baton Rouge and, of course, Fayetteville. And then some of the best games I remember watching was on that Friday. In fact, if you remember that Darren McFadden game when Houston Nutt, he ran for like 3,000 yards against LSU, and Houston Nutt would eventually lead. That would be during the 2007 season. And so that was some great games have been on Friday. So that'd be interesting to see if they do move it to Friday.
And that's a perfect segue, Brad. You're a professional because I want to we might as well start with Chris Paul. Paul from Arkansas was the commitment that kind of jump-started everything. I knew fairly early on how kind of the wind was going and everything, and everybody kind of picked up everything with that. And that's a solid family. The dad, Coach Paul, is a Navy veteran, and us Navy folks kind of stick together when it's stuff like that. But He's come to Ole Miss, and they are making no bones about this whenever it's asked. They're coming here to win a national championship. That is their goal. Not saying they're going to do it, but that is their goal. And you can tell Lane Kiffin is recruiting, especially in the portal, recruiting to the playoff, which is something that Ole Miss has not been able to do ever.
No, that's said perfectly. Number one is he's recruiting to the playoff. I mean, that's what he's doing. And Pete Golding has done a phenomenal job recruiting the defense. And, without getting too deep in the weeds, both you and I have been kind of all over this Chris Paul recruiting. You're right. His father is a solid man. Thanks both to you and Chris Paul Sr. for your service. It's going to be fun to watch because I think he's number one, he's a dynamic football player, but he's a dynamic leader in the locker room. I think he's going to really bounce well off Suntarine Perkins. Perkins swam a little bit this year, and he also got injured. No one's really talking about that injury that he got. I'm not specific what that injury was, but I do know that he was hurt in the latter part of the year. So, with Perkins getting better each and every game, you've got Paul, a seasoned veteran, coming in. I think he'll play immediately. That linebacking core is going to be a huge component of this Pete Golding defense. Now that you've got some help in the back half of that secondary, there's a little bit of graduation. There's been a little bit of a fluidity of the back half of that secondary. But once again, I lean much more to that defensive front. If you can continue to rotate players in, we've seen some guys that are coming back. We've seen what they're doing in the portal. I think more than anything, it all starts and ends at the line of scrimmage. And I think as long as they can do that, that's going to allow Paul to flow, going to allow Perkins to flow, put Perkins on the edge a little bit, let him rush the quarterback. He just finds a way to get to the quarterback.
TJ Dudley will be on the field next year as well.
And, that's one thing, too, is Dudley coming in the latter part of the year really helped Ole Miss because Perkins was not able to go. So that just allowed Perkins to rest a little bit because Dudley came in and was really good in the back half of the season.
No, you're mistaken, Dudley. Dudley didn't play this year. He wasn't eligible to play
Dudley.
This year. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You got players mixed up. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah, Dudley's a guy that they'll be leaning on this year. He did not play. You're right, but Perkins. I think what I was thinking is Coleman coming on, playing well in the back half of the season, and then we saw Baptiste do much better as well. But I think we just heard the name Dudley all year. That kind of popped in my mind. But he's definitely someone they'll be leaning on next year.
Yeah, him and Chris Graves. Graves actually started at cornerback against Georgia.
Yeah,
And I assume that he's only going to have more and more of a role because this was his redshirt freshman year. He came as a redshirt freshman to school, and so he'll come next year as a sophomore. You have corners that are being recruited by Ole Miss currently. I think Lewis Moore, which, by the way, nobody knew anything about him. The staff did a fantastic job of keeping him under wraps.
They did, and I think there'll be more of that over the next couple of weeks. Once again, we talked about that earlier, but I watched some of his tape after saw that he had committed. He fits this Golding defense perfectly, and that's one thing that I don't think we're talking enough about. It's just how well Pete Golding has adapted into the system and how Lane Kiffin is allowing him to drive the truck. He's got the keys. He's pushing the gas. He's pushing the brake. He's handling everything. And I think that just we've definitely seen just how well Ole Miss has played defensively this year. We'll just have to see where things go. But I really like what Pete Golding has done with this defense. And you made a good point. As long as they continue to recruit to the playoff, recruit specific positions that they need, specifically, backup players, players that can make a difference, I think that's what it's all about.
All right. So here's the question, Brad. What are you hearing in the portal on the D-line and O-line?
Well, the offensive line, we know that there was a big-time recruit that came in from, I believe it was Indiana. Is it Carter Smith?
Yeah, that was Carter Smith from Indiana.
So he went off to Florida State over the weekend. David Johnson had a pretty good, I'm not going to say exclusive, but I know he was able to touch base with him. And you can read that at reps247.com. And it's pretty much down to Ole Miss and Florida State. They really need him. Ole Miss was able to get the graduate, not a graduate transfer, but the transfer. Is it Gertrude Smith? Did I say that right?
I think it's Gershon.
Gershon Smith out of Southern Miss.
Gershon Scott.
And I was, pretty good reviews out of Scott, out of the transfer portal, so
Mhm.
they're able to land him. And from what I understand, there could be a possibility of a Texas A&M or maybe it's an Oklahoma offensive lineman that's in the portal. I have to dig a little bit more about that, but that's what that offensive front looks like. Defensive line right now, I'll be honest with you, I love where Ole Miss is right now without anybody, transferring in. What they're coming back with McGee's and Jared Ivey, but you'd love to get Walter Nolen and you'd love to get Princely out of Florida. Those are two huge components of this Ole Miss defense. Hearing good things. I know you're hearing and you're sourcing that Ole Miss is in a good spot with Princely as well. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of days.
Yeah, it should be quite interesting. And they're also Ole Miss they're hosting a cornerback visiting from UCF right currently.
Yeah,
And
I believe.
yes, and there's a couple other players that are going to come in. I think everybody needs to understand that this portal has a chance to get a whole lot of fun. What Monday and Tuesday was, I think we're in for some more of Monday and Tuesday. I think this weekend with the Walter Nolen, if he's on campus Friday through Sunday, my goodness, can you imagine the rumors and innuendos that are going to be flying on social media those days?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a player that I was told that was going to commit today. They did not. So I'm going to leave the airplane GIF that I use that everybody's getting a big kick out of. So I'm going to leave it up. I do expect that particular player to commit. It just hasn't happened yet. So we'll leave that one up. But there are definitely 2 or 3 players out there that Ole Miss has offered, and we'll see what happens. I'm really interested, too, about quarterback Anthony Maddox Jr.
Yes.
David has spoken with Anthony Maddox Sr., who played at Delta State, also played with Pete Golding, and we'll see what happens with him. But I think more than anything, everybody's excited to see what happens with Walter Nolen, who we know for sure Steve Wiltfong of 247 Sports said that he's absolutely visiting, not exactly sure when. And that's going to be interesting to see if Ole Miss can land Walter Nolen. He's Kim Dichie good. It's what people have described to me.
Yeah, honestly, and Ole Miss fans are watching this. I think he might be Chris Jones good.
We'll see. That's a whole nother level.
Yeah,
Chris Jones is one of the best defensive linemen I've ever seen. He's as good as who was it? Jordan Davis for Georgia that was so good.
Yeah.
So that's another level, and we'll see if he's going to be that good. But this is look, Stephen. Let's just put the cards on the table. Call me, call you, call whoever wants to listen, whatever you want to call them. Next year setting up to be on paper the biggest season in Ole Miss football history. I think they'll sell out of season tickets. I think almost all of the games will be 100% lockout, sellouts, 100%. It's going to be a situation of where I think Dart returns, Quinshon Judkins returns. There was a X/tweet put out today. There's a good chance maybe that Ulysses Bentley comes back. If that's the case, then you've got a running back room that's loaded because I love Riscano. I mean, we just didn't see him very much this year because they didn't need him. So if you get Riscano back, you get Bentley, you get Judkins, and then you get Kawan Lacey. That's depth that Alabama has.
Yeah.
You continue to go to the portal and add some depth on the offensive front. And I promise they're not done across that offensive front. I've seen the names. I know who they're going after. They're not done. So continue to add to that. The wide receiver room, I would put up against any in the country. Nobody's really talking a ton about Deion Smith, who is a difference maker. Jordan Watkins coming back. You get Caden Prescorn back at tight end, who we only saw the best of Prescorn in the last 2 or 3 games of the year. Not to mention how well of a blocking tight end he is. And then I think Aiden Williams is someone that can get, I think we put too much on Aiden Williams last year. Everybody did. Not just me. I think everyone did. They put too much on him. And he really couldn't fulfill what we had for him. So I expect him to have a good year as well. We saw Jeremiah Dillon hit the portal. We saw Braylon Brown hit the portal. And there may be a couple of more. But
J.J. Henry.
J.J. Henry. But those were players that, they weren't in the field. Yeah. And I think you'll expect to see, you'll see Deion Smith hit the field immediately. And you start talking about bringing out Deion on one side, Jordan Watkins in the slot, Juice Wells who do you cover?
Yeah.
I mean,
Trey Harris. I think Trey Harris is the best receiver in the Southeastern Conference, and he's coming back.
And you start talking about someone like a Juice Wells or Jordan Watkins or something like that's running second team. Um, you know, that's just obscene numbers at wide receiver. So uh, you hate to use the term loaded this early, but my goodness, right now they look loaded.
Yeah, and honestly, everybody needs to keep an eye. If Ulysses Bentley comes back, okay, you are looking at a point where I think Kwan Lacey has a chance to be the number 2 running back going into next season. When it's actually put, he is that good. And the last time I saw a running back with as impressive as film, and he's a 5A player from the Dallas, Texas area. We are not talking about somebody that went to Pisgah. We are not talking about somebody that went to Puckett. We're talking about Lancaster High School, and he starred, and just look at his highlight film, and his lateral movement is special. The last time I saw a running back that I felt this way about was Quinshon Judkins, honestly.
He's going to have to be really good to unseat Ulysses Bentley, because Bentley got stronger as the year went on. And what he was able to do in the latter part of the year it felt like you could see him evolve as a running back. I think he started feeling his way around the offense a whole lot better. And this was an offensive line that was really beat up. So we'll see what happens. By the way, hearing some pretty good things on Jalen Williams. I thought for a moment there he was going to enter the portal. He very well could. But I think there's some rumblings that he may be coming back. If that's the case, that's even more depth across that offensive front. Ole Miss really needs Smith, the transfer out of Indiana, and that's definitely someone that could really help this offensive front.
Any gut feeling on that one?
When he interviewed with David, you can read the interview. He was very complimentary of the town and complimentary of what Ole Miss had, and this feels like an NIL decision. If that's the case, I like Ole Miss's chances. They have been, let's just say, very advantageous when it comes to the NIL. Lane Kiffin came to the press conference today with the NIL quarter zip, and I think he understands what's going on. And, yeah, I see the Grove Collective sweatshirt you have on there. So this is a very, very aggressive off season. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it in our lifetime, what Ole Miss is doing from a Grove Collective situation. And here's the thing. No one has told me this. And, I don't know this to be 100% true, but it feels like a lot of this money that is being allocated to this particular 2024 class via transfer in high school is not coming from the main Grove Collective coffers, so to speak. It's coming from donors directly. So that's good for the longevity of the Grove Collective Fund, that you've got members that are willing to step up to the plate, so to speak, because they understand just how important this 24 season is to both Lane Kiffin and the team, and I guess you should say the fan base as a whole.
Yeah, and it's just nuts when you think about what the depth at running back could look like. The depth of the quarterback room, that's not going away. The wide receiver room, to where you could have a 5th and 6th wide receiver that might be Aiden Williams, that's absolutely nuts. The offensive line, there's still some work that needs to be done there, but the defensive line, good gosh, if it gets the names that I'm hearing they're recruiting and all that, you're looking at a best starting lineup defensive line in the Southeastern Conference. They improved the linebacker core. They need to work on the back end of the defense, but you can see where they need to get. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel with the construction of this team.
And in one position, I think Ole Miss needs to look at is at tight end. I mean, Caden Prescorn, we know that there's been some portal action with the tight end. Is it Kyron Heath, I believe, entered the portal? Yes. Which tight end entered the portal? I think it was Heath.
Kyron Heath, yeah.
Yeah. And so you've got I don't know about Hudson Wolf. He had a couple of catches this year, but he got injured. He injured that shoulder. We'll have to see about him. I'm not sure about him, but Prescorn, hurt his foot. So they don't have a particular tight end that can come in. So I expected them to land a tight end at this point. So I do think they'll probably, I don't think it's a priority like other positions are, because I just think it's down the pole, but I do think Ole Miss needs to land a tight end to give some depth to Caden Prescorn. But yeah, I mean, they've done well so far, but it's kind of in the the fifth or sixth inning. There's still a lot of pitches to be thrown. There's still a lot of batters to get out here, and it's quite a ways to the bottom of the ninth and the end of the game. And so, what does Ole Miss have to do at this point? Well, you've got to close, and in order to do that, you've got to do your best to give to work those NIL waters as best you can. And I think, the best driver right now is these people that are the behind the scenes that are making it work. And you've got a great collective body that's kind of overseeing the coffers of money, but you got Walker Jones driving the car. Walker's done a great job navigating this. And Lane Kiffin called him out specifically in the press conference, thanking him and the Grove Collective, because that's what it's going to take to win next year, is just keeping this roster together and going and plugging and placing players in specific positions. And you nailed it. You recruit to the playoff. You recruit that transfer portal to the playoff. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, Daquan Wright is the Virginia Tech tight end, and they're actually
that's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
They're bringing him in this weekend per Kobe Price, who said that. He's the one that had that information as well. On Thursday, I've went ahead and recorded my Thursday show, and it's my first crossover show with the Locked On Nittany Lions guy. And I wanted to get some first impressions and things like that. But one of the things, just talking to him, there's some concern that over the next couple of days, there's going to be even more opt-outs. Chop Robinson has already opted out. Manny Diaz is not going to be there for Penn State. But there's a couple of other really good football players. They're talking about their best tackle could opt out. I think some opt-outs may be about to hit the Penn State Nittany Lions.
Let's look at it. Let's put pause on that for a moment, because I think it's something to look at. I don't think you'll see a repeat of what year was it? 2014 that Ole Miss played in the Peach Bowl?
The TCU game, yes.
Yeah. I don't think we'll see a repeat in that, simply because I think, once again, not to say it's a spring game, but what we have is an opportunity for these players to get together with kind of a different mindset. So many of these deals, like Lane Kiffin talked about, so many times you make a decision whether you're going to the NFL or you're coming back. That happens after the bowl game. What we're having here is all this happening pre-bowl game, and they're not opting out. So it's almost like the 2024 calendar has moved over. You're all of a sudden getting ready for that 2024 season. So what we'll see, I think, is a much more energized team, a team that played well against Mississippi State, kind of flipped the script a little bit. Getting better. I think Dart will be, completely healed. Pre-scoring will have time to rest that foot. So many players will have an opportunity. Quinchon had a rib injury. He'll be 100%. But I think by flipping the script, turning the page, all of these deals getting done, you're getting cranked up and you're getting ready for a Penn State team that I think you nailed it. We don't know what type of Penn State's team is going to be there. And I think that's your normal tight college bowl team. It's a bowl team that has had a really good year. They're 10-2 as well, but they're not really looking to 24 as much as Ole Miss is, in the effect that some of these guys that are looking to go pro, they're going to opt out. They're going to transfer, what have you. Ole Miss hasn't had one player of the 22 enter the transfer portal. Ole Miss has not had any of the 22 have declared for the NFL draft except Dayton Wade. None of the 22, including Dayton Wade, have opted out of the bowl game. Those are incredible numbers. And when we visited with Lane Kiffin, when Ole Miss was announced, he said right then, I don't think we're going to have any opt-outs. And I thought, there's no way. No way there's not any opt-outs to play in this bowl game. No way there's going to be at least 5 or 6. I don't know if there's going to be any of the 22 that opt out of the bowl game.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool during the game. Now, Penn State and Ole Miss, like you said, it's two different things. You have one that they're going all in for 2024, and the other is kind of not. But for 2023, they have essentially the same resume. And it's going to, like, if people look at it, it's going to be weird for them because Ole Miss lost to Georgia and Alabama. Penn State lost to Michigan and Ohio State. Yeah. Those are the only losses in there. Penn State has a good defense, but the Big Ten honestly does not have good offenses. I looked into the statistical analysis of that. I'd like to see how Penn State, Michigan, and all that would do against, say, LSU. That would be interested to me. And whenever I was looking at this, I was like, Okay, the LSU, the Alabama, and Texas A&M are probably better than any offense that Penn State has played against in the Big Ten. And if Ole Miss held those teams to just a Big Ten average scoring, do you know how many points per game Ole Miss would have given up this season? Just if they gave up 24 points in those games on average, do you know what Ole Miss's scoring average would be this season?
What is
Given
that?
up 16 points is the number of points per game Ole Miss defense would have given up. And that lets me know that maybe Penn State's defense isn't all that. Maybe the offenses in the Big Ten just aren't that good, because when you look at Michigan, when you look at Ohio State, they're not even very good right now. Michigan's quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, isn't even trusted to throw a forward pass in a tight game. It's really interesting whenever you look at the defenses. The Big Ten has 6 teams that are below 20 points per game given up defensively. The offenses in that league are not good.
It's different. You know, I had a chance to visit with one of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl representatives today at the press conference. You know, they were at State College yesterday, and he said they flew into Harrisburg, a direct flight from Atlanta. And he said, you know, you run through a lot of rural roads, and all of a sudden you just show up, and there's a huge stadium of 100,000. You know, the town of College Station, I keep saying College Station, of State College is, you know, it's just not very big. And so it's the point I'm trying to make is it's completely different dynamic with Penn State versus Ole Miss. You got completely different types of offenses going after each other. You got completely different defenses. Here's the deal. They've got some big time playmakers, but the question is can they stop this Ole Miss defense? I would love to see, and I can't wait to see this Penn State defense against this Ole Miss offense. Mississippi State, you know, we talked about it. They played hard, and they did a lot of good things against Ole Miss. But one thing we'll see Lane Kiffin do that he didn't do in the Egg Bowl, he's going to open that playbook wide open. We're going to see stuff that we haven't seen all year. He's had a whole month to game plan against James Franklin and Penn State. And don't think for a minute that Lane Kiffin, Pete Golding, Charlie Weiss Jr. don't understand the magnitude of playing in a New Year's Six bowl game, showcasing the talent on the team. And look, let's be honest, Lane Kiffin showcasing everything that he's done over his career. You know, a lot of his bowl games, he talked about, hey, I think Michael Katz of the Daily Journal asked him, said, hey, what's it like playing in a New Year's Six bowl game? It's a really big bowl game. You're going to be the number one bowl game on December the 30th. He said, you know, not to be boastful, but I played in this game a lot. I've coached in this game a lot. But the thing about it, a lot of that has been when he's been an assistant coach. And so this gives Lane an opportunity to be the preeminent coach that night, to throw caution to the wind and to run the trick plays and to do all this stuff, to go in for it on fourth down in these crazy situations. So Penn State's going to have to be ready to roll on the defensive side of things, and I think they will. The question is to me, the game's going to be the Ole Miss defense versus the Penn State offense. I'm anxious to see what Penn State's going to try to do on offense. I think they're going to try to run the ball and set the line of scrimmage as best they can. Ole Miss going to have to force them to go the air. I expect that probably to be the case. But, yeah, it was funny today having that conversation. He was very nicely said, it's just completely different towns, completely different people, and completely different ball teams. We've got a really good matchup in the Peach Bowl. These two teams couldn't be more different. Yet having the same record, also having the same type losses. You talked about it, Michigan, Ohio State versus Alabama versus Georgia. The same thing. That's about the only thing they've got in common is the type losses they have. Everything else is completely different.
You know, one thing's interesting. This is a Manny Diaz defense, and Manny Diaz isn't going to coach the game. It's probably going to be Anthony Poindexter.
Yeah,
is going to be the coordinator that calls the game. But we all know Manny Diaz defenses, and it doesn't matter if it's Anthony Poindexter or not. It's going to be the same fast flow attacking defense that Manny Diaz put in. So the way you attack that is through screen passes, misdirections, draws. You do stuff like that, counters, things like that to get outside and do it. You can really affect that defense. And I talked to Zach Sako from Locked On Nittany Lions today, and the full show will be out Thursday. And one thing that he's concerned about, Penn State secondary, this is from Zach Sako, he says is not particularly good. They benefit because the defense generates a lot of sacks and the time isn't there. If Jackson Dart has protection and can get off the ball, he fully expects Trey Harris to eat. He fully expects Jordan Watkins to get open. And Ole Miss can make some hay in the pass game going against that Penn State defense.
And I'm sure a lot of Ole Miss fans are saying, wait a minute, why didn't we see that against Mississippi State? Which leads into my next point. If I'm Penn State, I'm looking at that Ole Miss Mississippi State game and figuring out what the Bulldogs did on defense. I think there was a collection of things that happened. Number one, you had a quarterback in Jackson Dart that simply was just injured. I mean, he could not, he couldn't move like he's going to be able to move in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. So, number one, I think that's the case. Number two, I think Ole Miss didn't play particularly well. I'm not sure that Charlie Weiss and Lane Kiffin called a very good game. But I think thirdly, Mississippi State played with a ton of emotion, and they just wanted it more than Ole Miss did in the first half. So, yeah, I'm definitely watching that tape. But I think you make a good point. If Ole Miss can get the edge a little bit with those screen passes, can loosen up the linebackers, and can hit the middle of the field. I mean, they hit one play at the middle of the field with Caden Prescorn. But Jordan Watkins, if he can sit down in the middle a little bit, they could get Trey Harris on some 101s on the cornerbacks and get some up balls to the end zone. And then, of course, getting separation. That's one thing that Ole Miss struggled with against Mississippi State is getting separations with those defensive backs. I think if you can continue to get some offensive line play, we expect Jaden Williams to play. Lane Kiffin made it apparent that he only believes Micah Pettis is the only one that's going to be out. So that gives Ole Miss an opportunity to play with pretty much an offensive front that they can practice with over the next couple of weeks to get some type of cohesiveness. And if you get Williams back at left tackle, that allows Jeremy James to go back to right tackle. And then you deal with Quincy McGee and Victor Kearney. And then you've got some options at center, and you got Reese McIntyre that can plug and play, and you get Eli Acker. Just kind of get some fluidity, if you will, at that offensive front. That's the key. I mean, Jackson Dart's got to be upright. He's got to stay inside the pocket as much as possible. And when he flees from the pocket, he's got to be able to run. And he couldn't do that against the Bulldogs simply because his right ankle was just busted up and he couldn't do it. But that's the key. If you got a healthy Jackson Dart and they get him outside the pocket, he can run. Completely changes the dynamic of the game.
All right, Brad, thank you very much for stopping by today. And thanks everybody for watching. This has been Shark Tank Live. We are going to live stream tomorrow night. It'll be the SEC schedule release. That'll be on the channel. And this weekend, if for some reason Princely commits and Walter Nolen or something like that happens, we might stream this weekend as well. But anyway, thank you very much, Brad. And we'll see everybody later. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Take care.